Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome back to another video. This video is going to be doing an episode review on last night's episode of The Walking Dead. This was Season 7, Episode 10, entitled New Best Friends. Now, in this episode, we got to see a few things, not like every single part of, every community that we know in The Walking Dead. Like, we didn't get to see the Saviors, we didn't get to see Maggie or Jesus at the hilltop, but it wasn't also just a core group focused sort of episode either, like we've had throughout the entire first half of the season. It was actually like mixed up. Like we got to see the Kingdom, of course, we get to see Carol, we get to see Daryl as well. Obviously, I mean, he's part of the Kingdom, and then of course we get to see Rick meeting up with this junkyard crew, which by the way, we now know as the Scavengers. Now, if you guys don't know who the Scavengers are, it's basically a group from the comic book. I'm not going to say any more about it because I don't want to spoil you guys, but it's if it goes anywhere according to plan of the comic book, yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say anything, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say because they could go a different direction. You know what I mean? But who knows? We're just going to leave that alone. We're just going to put that over there, and we're going to talk about that maybe in my prediction video for next week's episode of The Walking Dead. Alright, so the episode actually started off with a sneak peek that we saw and that I actually went ahead and reviewed in my prediction video this past Thursday, which, by the way, if you guys want to see my predictions for this episode, I will leave the link in the description below to it, and you guys can go ahead and check that out. With that being said, the sneak peek did start off the episode, the sneak peek where Ezekiel and, his group, basically the Kingdom, including Morgan, were making a drop to the Saviors, and the Saviors came by in a couple of trucks, just like they have before so many other times. They've made this drop, and they're on good terms with the Saviors, they're peaceful, and, it always really goes pretty smoothly, but not so much this time. Alright, so as we know, the sneak peek ended off with basically Richard and a Savior pointing a gun at each other, and that's where it stopped. Essentially what that led to, rather, is Richard giving up his gun, and as the Savior was about to hit Richard with his own gun after he took it, Morgan actually goes ahead and steps in and hits one of the Savior that was going to hit him with the gun in the hand with his stick, with his Aikido stick, of course. And basically what eventually ended up happening was the Saviors left with their supply, and he also took Morgan's stick and Richard's gun as well. So Morgan now lost his stick. He did sort of intervene because he knows for a fact that the Saviors, they're not good people, right? And something had to be done about it, really, because you're not allowed to just abuse people like that. He was trying to defend Richard, and fair on him, right? He's obviously probably not going to kill for the guy, but he did what he had to do to protect him, right then and there. And also, I'm still coming off my cold. I'm still a bit sick, and I have to cough suddenly at some points. So you're probably going to be seeing a lot of cuts. That's just the way it's going to be, because I'm talking for a long period of time, and that's just the way it is. So anyway, I am getting better, though, thankfully. Anyway, that's where the sneak peek ended off, basically right there. They all kind of went their separate ways, and then eventually it led back to Richard and Daryl in the Kingdom. The next scene that was really, really important, rather, was Richard and Daryl in the Kingdom. Daryl actually has a crossbow now, which we knew that was going to happen. It's not his crossbow, of course. Daryl lost his to Dwight, but it is another crossbow that was at the Kingdom, and Richard asks Daryl to go help him. And essentially what happens with this whole storyline, it's not set in motion right here, right then, but I'm going to go over it, sort of bit by bit type of thing. I'm not going to go through chronological order or anything like that, because this is probably an easier way to do so. So anyway, they go off, and Daryl plans on helping him, and essentially they come to a part of a road where the Saviors actually drive through quite often, and basically they were going to set up an ambush. They were going to ambush them, they were going to kill the Saviors that were coming through, and Richard actually went ahead and lit a trail, basically, back to Carol, and her, her little house there at the cemetery or whatever, whatever she's got, wherever she's living, the little house that, basically she's living in because she wants to stay there, but at the same time, she doesn't want to be there. You know what I mean? If that makes any type of sense. I'm still trying to understand it myself, but either way, Richard knows that Carol is very important to Ezekiel, so if he basically thinks, and it's not a bad plan, but it's Carol at the same time, you know what I mean? It's not a bad plan because he basically wants the Saviors to find the dead Saviors and then track that back to Carol's little house, right? And basically the objective was to get the Saviors to kill Carol, and then in turn, that would get Ezekiel very angry at the Saviors, and then most likely want to join Rick's crusade to fight back against the Saviors. So, again, very smart plan on Richard's part, I'm not going to lie about it, but obviously it's a little sadistic. He's sacrificing somebody, and of course it's Carol at the same time. So, essentially, Daryl finds out that it is Carol. He basically keeps asking, who she is, what her name is, and stuff like that. And he ends up actually taking Richard down, which is actually a scene that we've seen in the trailer for this half of the season, him basically beating the ever-living shit out of somebody. We thought maybe it was a Savior. It wasn't. It was Richard. So he took Richard down just in time for the Saviors to basically pass by the trucks and stuff without noticing them. And, of course, that, would mean they didn't actually get the ambush off, and that won't lead them back to Carol, and Carol's safe now. And basically, Daryl explains to Richard that if anything happens to Carol, if the Saviors get to her, if a walker bites her, even if lightning kills her, I'm gonna kill you. And he basically, he made it point blank to her, or him, rather. He made it point blank to him that if anything ever happened to Carol, he's going to hunt him down and kill Richard himself. Obviously, the loyalty's there, right? And in terms of Daryl and stuff, basically, that was it for now, and then we actually get to see him a little later in the episode. But for now, we'll go ahead and go over Rick and this new junkyard crew, otherwise known as the Scavengers, which, like I said, they're just known as the Scavengers. We don't know exactly if they act like the Scavengers or, what's going to happen with that point of view, but well, I guess we'll get to it when it comes to it. You know what I mean? In the comic book, the Scavengers were actually ran into before Glenn died. It was around issue 75, I believe, where Glenn and Heath, I believe, ran into them on a supply run. They ran into the Scavengers and they actually ended up fighting them. They eventually led them back to Alexandria to obviously get the help of Rick and the others to fight them off. So they weren't allies in the comic book, but it's sort of seeming like they're going to be here in the TV show. Again, they often go different paths, between the comic and the TV show. I mean, for instance, in the comic, Andrea is very much still alive to this day. In the show, she died in season 3. You know what I mean? It's, there's obviously big differences, and this could be one of them. We have no idea. Or it could be a little swerve to make us think, that they're going to be good in the TV show, but really not be. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm really thinking about, what they're really, what their intentions really are, rather. But, I'm hoping for the best. I'm optimistic, I guess, is what I could say. But after all of our group has been through, what they've been through, it would be easy to say that it would probably not work out in the end for Rick and the crew. Anyways, when we finally get to see Rick and the junkyard crew, or the Scavengers now, it basically starts off with the sneak peek that we've seen to do with the Scavengers, basically leading them into a junkyard, all through a tunnel, and there was no dialogue whatsoever. And eventually Rick actually asked them, after the leader basically said, "We own your lives, do you want to buy them back?" And Rick basically said, "The Saviors own our lives, and they're going to own yours too. They're going to come looking if you kill us." And then Rick went on to sort of try to broker a deal with them, for them to help fight back against the Saviors and stuff. And before they could get anything else out, Rick basically asked to see Gabriel. And it actually ended up happening. Now, the next scene, what I thought was really cool is when Gabriel finally came out, he found Rick, of course, was, there. They found Gabriel and stuff. So Gabriel is safe, and he wasn't turning against the group or anything like that. He was actually taken against his will, later revealed. He basically heard, apparently, a noise from within the walls and went to go check it out, and he was ambushed, which that was probably what that big noise was when he entered that room, with the supplies and the food and stuff. So I have a feeling like the Boots person, this mystery Boots girl, which I mean, it's not really a mystery anymore, but either way, she went in to steal the supplies that they got from the boat, because she in turn was basically waiting for someone to actually go and get the supplies from the boat. And then when, someone finally did that, hence Rick and Aaron, she wanted to basically steal the supplies back, basically. That's essentially what she wanted to do. And that's why she was in the community. I don't exactly know how she got over the walls without anybody noticing or hearing, but anyway, Gabriel heard a noise and he went to go check it out, and he got ambushed and basically taken against his will. According to him, at least. You know, I mean, it sounds kind of believable because, again, we heard a noise of like maybe someone getting attacked or falling, you know, and obviously that would be Gabriel, but who knows? We don't have a clue. But either way, I thought this next scene was really cool because they basically threatened to kill Rick, and they were about to. They started getting into a fight. They started trying to, you know, fight some of them off. They were getting huddled around. All of their group were. And actually, Gabriel went ahead, pulled a knife, and took this girl, Tamiel, and put it against her throat and basically said, "Let them go or I will kill her," you know? And it was such a good scene with Gabriel because his whole character was set up and built around a giant pussy. I mean, essentially that's basically what it was. And I mean, the fact that he's doing this now is crazy to think about. You know what I mean? Just such a weak character of what he was before to what he is now. It's just absolutely insane to think about. And I'm really starting to like Gabriel now, even more than I already did before, which is kind of hard to top because I really liked him. Especially when he came up with the idea to fool Negan into thinking Maggie was dead. Like, that was absolutely brilliant. But anyways, guys, after that happened, they sort of agreed to help Rick in fighting them. They wanted something in return. And eventually they led Rick up to the top of like a mountain of just junk. And they ended up throwing him down into like a pit, like a walker fighting pit, sort of like the governor had, but this was like inside of trash. Like, they threw him down the trash pile, and it was just him, no other members of his group. They took all of his weapons, of course. So he went down there, and this is when we got to see that really fucking cool spiked walker. Again, really cool. I thought it was a badass scene. There was a couple of moments where I thought maybe Rick was gonna have to maybe cut off his hand or something. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it could have happened. Like, the walker was just penetrated with knives and blades and stuff like that. Like, it was crazy. It was such a good makeup job. And, of course, the helmet was really badass. And anyway, while he was fighting him off, he actually ended up sticking his right hand, which, again, I like the symbolism of this because every time that we've seen Rick actually injure his right hand, it's always been his right one. Back in season 4, when he absolutely beat the shit out of Tyrese, it was his right hand, and that was injured for that half of the season. And you know what I mean? Like, it's such symbolism because in the comic book, we know that Rick actually gets his hand cut off by the governor. And that doesn't happen in the TV show, but in the comic, he gets his right hand cut off by the governor. And in the TV show, every time his hand is actually injured, it's always his right hand. And then he always has to use his left hand to shoot primarily, but they've never actually fully went through with cutting the damn thing off, which I think is cool. You know, I don't really know if it's a very practical idea for the show. Don't get me wrong, I think that it would be badass, but you know, the cost and effects and stuff that he would have to go through. I mean, Herschel, it was a little easier because he could hide it a little better, you know. He could bend his leg up and stuff like that, but he'd have to constantly wear like a sock, and they'd have to constantly, in every single shot, make sure that his hand was completely out of the picture, and he's the main character, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't work as well, obviously, as it does in the comic book, but to compensate for that, they keep injuring the damn thing. So I think it's pretty cool. I think there's a little bit of symbolism there. That's what I like to believe. That's never really been said outright, but I mean, it's always the right hand. You know what I mean? It has to have something to do with it, right? So anyway, when he stuck his hand up to defend against the walker, his hand actually went through one of the spikes on the helmet of the walker. And I mean, it was just such a badass scene because no matter what, he didn't pull away, he didn't jerk away, anything like that. He just kept going at it because he knew that he had to in order to not get bitten, in order not to die, because the walker has spikes everywhere. If he comes any closer than hand's reach, Rick's gonna be a fucking pincushion, essentially. So he doesn't really have any other option, you know, take one for the hand, take one for the team there, or, you know, risk hurting something else, right? So anyway, Rick ended up trying to, first of all, beat him with a keyboard. That obviously didn't work. I mean, it's a keyboard, metal helmet, you know, it's not gonna happen. But he finally had the brilliant idea to basically tear all of the garbage down off of the wall on top of the walker and pin the walker down that way. Like, very resourceful, very, very great plan, on Rick. I think it was like sort of moment's notice. I don't think he went in there, thinking that was what he was going to do. But it was sort of just like spur of the moment type thing. And I thought it was a brilliant plan. And then he finally picked up a piece of glass with his right hand again, because it's already injured. Why not? And, he did end up, he did end up wrapping it in cloth. I didn't want to pause there because I'd probably lose my train of thought. He ended up wrapping it in cloth a little bit and then stabbing the walker with a piece of glass. He didn't have a knife or a blade or anything like that, so he had to use what he had there, right? So anyway, he finally got out of there, and they finally made the deal with the leader, which, I forget what her name is. Starts with J. Can't remember it. Very weird name. And also very weird haircut. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that, but either way, he made a deal with him. And she basically wants guns, a lot of them too. And then she agreed to fight their battle, with them against the Saviors. So again, that's kind of what's iffy about it. Do they really go get the guns, give them to these strangers they don't know, and just expect them to blindly, follow them and fight against Negan and the Saviors? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see it myself. I know Rick wants to believe that it's a possibility, and, this is probably the only way that he's going to win against Negan, especially without the help of the Kingdom now. That will probably change very shortly. But he's a desperate man right now, which I definitely get, but at the same time, I just hope they don't waste all of their supplies that they're going to get trying to trust them, and then them end up not following through. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to be the shitty part, basically. So anyway, they finally made the deal, and that's essentially where that scene ended off on. Now, a couple other scenes here was actually with Daryl and Carol. Daryl actually ended up going to Carol's house, where she lived, after Richard explained, where she was staying. And, he ended up staying the night there, or, somewhat rather. And he actually ended up eating there as well. Of course, there was a big emotional reunion. I can't talk today. Sorry, guys. There's a big emotional reunion there with Carol and Daryl. He ended up actually not telling her about Abraham and Glenn, and of course, like, all of the people that they've lost so far, like Denise. She probably doesn't really care about them, but Abraham and Glenn, he didn't actually end up telling her about it, because she basically explained to him, if something happened, to the rest of my group, if something happened, I would want to go back there and fight, and then I would have nothing left. If I killed more people, I don't want to kill more people. And that's why he ultimately makes the decision not to tell her, because he basically says the Saviors did come, we got them all, we're all good, we're all fine, everything's fine back at home. And of course, yeah, that is a lie, but he's trying to protect her at the same time, because he knows that she doesn't want to fight. It's just as simple as that. There's no other way to put it. She doesn't want to fight. And if she doesn't want to kill, if she can't kill anymore, then also, what happens if she's in a fight with some Saviors and she doesn't actually end up pulling the trigger? She's going to pay for it, and that's something Daryl, I don't think, can risk right now. Especially with, Carol just being so vulnerable, right now. And obviously he loves her, it's pretty obvious at this point. Okay, guys, so the remainder scenes in this episode were really not that important, but we did have a few hints that maybe Tara will go ahead and tell Rick and the group about Oceanside and about the guns that she had stocked there. There were a few hints dropped that she might do it. And then also, Rosita was kind of being a little bit of a bitch. Understandable, I guess, but at the same time, she does have to get over it. Basically explaining that she wanted to go out no matter what. They basically wanted to bring back the supplies that they stole from them, bring them back home, heal up a little bit. Rick's injured. Aaron is injured from getting in a fight with them. And they're just not ready to go out and look for the guns right now. But Rosita is on the ball. You know what I mean? She's ready. She wants to go now. And she's just being stubborn, essentially. You know what I mean? She just wants to run and gun against the Saviors at all costs. She's... I don't know. She just doesn't want to let her guard down, which, again, is understandable. Don't get me wrong. But, yeah, I don't know. Again, she can be a little bit of a bitch, but she's cool in the comic books, afterwards, and stuff. So I have hope. She's one of my favorite characters, actually, in the comic books. Yeah. Or, yeah. I'm not going to say anything. You guys know what I'm talking about. That's a big spoiler. Not gonna do it. Nope, not gonna do it. Anyways, back at the kingdom now. In the final scene, Daryl was actually inside, or not inside the cage, but in the room where the cage is at for Shiva. So he had a little special moment there with Tiger Shiva as well. He was sort of bonding with her in a way. You know, they're kind of one and the same. You know, obviously Daryl's not a fucking tiger, but you know what I mean? Like the mentality is sort of the same. They've both been caged up, of course. And there's a lot of comparisons, I guess, that you can make. And Morgan was confronting him, basically saying, you obviously didn't tell Carol, you know, about what happened. You didn't tell her that Glenn and Abraham died, or else, you know, she'd be right here, right now, ready for a fight, you know. So in a way, we're one and the same. You know, we're sort of alike in that sense. And Daryl points out, you know, whatever you're holding on to, Morgan, you have to let go of it. You know what I mean? You have to let go of it. No matter what, because the Saviors have killed their people, you know, and for some reason, Morgan still doesn't want to fight back, you know, and, again, he is holding on to obviously something, you know, the whole Aikido thing. He doesn't want to go back to kill everyone at every single moment type of thing, like mentality, like he had before, like the savage mentality. He doesn't want to go back to that, but he has to understand that he doesn't have to go back to that. You know what I mean? There can be a balance. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to say it. There can be a balance. Rick's not psycho at all times. He goes psycho, but he's not psycho at all times, you know? There's obviously a balance, and he, I think, has to find it, you know? And I think that's probably what Carol's trying to go through right now as well, is finding that balance. So that's why I also think that maybe Daryl was trying to also buy her time there and not have her, you know, get up and ready to fight now, because she's going through something. She's trying to heal right now. And Daryl, I think, understands that. But anyway, with that being said, Daryl actually ends up going to the hilltop, or, well, he doesn't go to the hilltop in the episode, but he starts to hit out the door. He goes out the door closes, and he's apparently going to the hilltop to stay there with Maggie, because he doesn't want to be around the kingdom anymore, basically. And he's going to the hilltop. They will be safe there as well. The Saviors do come into the side of the hilltop walls, unlike the kingdom, but I don't know if they would really think to look for him there anyways, you know? So he's going to the hilltop. That's what he's doing. And that was the end of the episode. Now, I know this was probably a rambling review, and I do apologize for it. But again, as I said, I am sick right now, and it's probably not the smoothest video of all time. But I'm doing my best. And I think that I should be better by my prediction video. So make sure you guys go ahead and tune into that this Thursday, which will be the 23rd of February. And with that being said, everybody, that was my episode review of Season 7, Episode 10, entitled New Best Friends. I thought it was a very solid episode. It was an extended episode as well. Not a 90-minute, just like an hour and 10, maybe, somewhere around there. Obviously not with commercials, but I mean, that was the whole runtime in total. But with that being said, I thought it was a solid episode. You know, we have this new group, the Scavengers, as we know them of now, you know, that we actually have a name for him now, which is pretty cool. I was kind of looking forward to getting one. Rick's right hand is injured again, so I'm kind of wondering how that's going to come into effect. Is that going to actually play a part in the whole war with the Saviors? I think that would be cool, because in the war with the Saviors of the comic book, obviously his right hand plays a part, because he hasn't had the goddamn thing for like a couple of years now. You know what I mean? He got it cut off when he was basically in the prison, or not. Well, I mean, he was in the prison, but at the time he was at Woodbury on a run, and, you know, it is what it is. I'm not going to explain the whole plot to you of the comic book, but he got caught off by the governor. We all know that. And like I said, I think the symbolism is sort of a thing with his right hand constantly getting injured. So if you guys agree with me there, let me know in the comment section below. It's just kind of an idea that I had. I think it definitely has something to do with it, though. I don't see why it wouldn't. But anyway, that is it, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video. Until then, take care, everybody. Bye.
Somebody said it's only those who dare to die young who get the most out of life under the sun. But I know it's not true. I've seen the future, and it's brighter than the eye when we are together. Yeah, it's brighter than